Let's go live to Brussels, where the Secretary General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, giving a press conference ahead of the key summit next week in Lithuania. Let's listen in.
Send a clear message. NATO stands united, and Russia's aggression will not pay. At the summit, we will make Ukraine even more stronger and set out a vision for its future. I expect Allied leaders will agree a package with 3 elements to bring Ukraine closer to NATO. First, we will agree a multi-year program of assistance to ensure full interoperability between the Ukrainian armed forces and NATO. Second, we will upgrade our political ties by establishing the NATO-Ukraine Council. And third, I expect Allied leaders will reaffirm that Ukraine will become a member of NATO and unite on how to bring Ukraine closer to its goal. Allies have already pledged 500 million euros for critical needs, including fuel, medical supplies, demining equipment, and pontoon bridges. We will also help build Ukraine's security and defense sector, including with military hospitals. And we will help Ukraine transition from Soviet era to NATO equipment and standards. President Zelensky will join us for the inaugural meeting of the new NATO-Ukraine Council. This will be a platform for crisis consultation and decision-making, where we all sit as equals to address shared security concerns. At the summit, we will take further major steps to strengthen our deterrence and defense, with 3 new regional defense plans to counter the 2 main threats to our alliance, Russia and terrorism. 1 plan for the North, the Atlantic and European Arctic. 1 for the center, covering the Baltic region and Central Europe, and a southern plan for the Mediterranean and Black Sea. To execute these plans, NATO is putting 300,000 troops on higher readiness, including substantial air and naval combat power. I expect leaders will endorse a defense production action plan to aggregate demand, boost capacity, and increase interoperability. To do all of this, we need to invest more. At the summit, allies will set a more ambitious defense investment pledge to invest a minimum of 2% of gross domestic product annually on defense. Today, we are releasing new defense spending estimates. In 2023, there will be a real increase of 8.3% across European allies and Canada. This is the biggest increase in decades, and the 9th consecutive year of increases in our defense spending. So European allies and Canada will have invested over 450 billion extra US dollars since we agreed our defense investment pledge in 2014. Then only 3 allies spent 2% of GDP on defense. This year, 11 allies reach or exceed the target, and we expect this number will rise substantially next year. At the summit, we will be joined by the leaders of Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea, because our security is not regional, it is global. So we are working more closely on issues such as cybersecurity, maritime security, and new technologies. We will also welcome the European Union to Vilnius. Our partnership has reached unprecedented levels, and we are committed to doing even more together. This will be Finland's first summit as a NATO ally, and we look forward to Sweden joining as soon as possible. Yesterday, I hosted a constructive meeting of senior officials from Turkey, Sweden, and Finland. And as the next step, I will meet with President Erdogan and Prime Minister Kristersson in Vilnius on Monday afternoon. For almost 75 years, NATO has been the strongest alliance in history. The decisions we will take at the Vilnius summit will ensure we continue to protect our people and our values. With that, I'm ready to take your questions.
Okay, we'll start with Lithuanian TV here.
Mindaugas Laukagalis from Lithuania National Radio and Television. Thank you for this opportunity. I have two questions. The first one is, Ukraine is calling 2008 Bucharest Declaration a historic mistake. How Vilnius Declaration will be different from that? Because in 2008, the leaders said that Ukraine will become a NATO member, and it seems that you're going to repeat this in 2023. So what's the difference? And the other question is, have you heard something from President Zelensky? Will he participate in the summit? Thank you.
There are many differences. One important difference is, of course, that Ukraine has come much closer to NATO because NATO allies have worked closely with Ukraine for many years, especially since 2014. So this has ensured a much higher level of cooperation and interoperability between Ukraine and NATO. And we will also, I expect also that leaders, when they meet in Vilnius, they will also agree a package that will help to move Ukraine even closer to NATO, partly by establishing the NATO-Ukraine Council, which is a political platform where we can have crisis consultations and also actually make decisions together and deepen our political cooperation. The practical support, and not least the multi-year program, also has a clear political dimension, because by agreeing to stand by Ukraine and also help them for the longer term and to ensure full interoperability with NATO, we are helping Ukraine to come even closer to NATO and NATO membership. And then finally, I am confident that we'll find a united way also to address the specific issue on membership, but I will not go into the details of exact language now, because that is something we will announce when everything is in place by the summit. I look forward to welcoming President Zelensky at the summit and to have him taking part in the first or the inaugural meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council.
ZDF.
Thank you very much. Florian Neuhan from ZDF German TV. Mr. Stoltenberg, first question would be, the US is actively considering, it says, to send cluster munitions to Ukraine, which are banned from more than 120 states. From a military point of view, do you think this is a good idea? Does Ukraine need such munitions? And from a political point of view, do you think it's wise to send weapons, munitions that are banned for good reasons?
So NATO as an alliance do not have a position on the Convention on Cluster Ammunition because a number of allies have signed the convention, but a number of allies have not signed the convention. And it is for individual allies to make decisions on the delivery of weapons and military supplies to Ukraine. So this will be for governments to decide, not for NATO as an alliance. We are faced with a brutal war, and we have to remember that this brutality is also reflected in the fact that we every day see casualties, and that cluster munitions is used by both sides, or cluster munitions are used by both sides. And Russia used cluster munitions in their brutal war aggression to invade another country, while Ukraine is using it to defend itself. The best way to end this brutal war is for President Putin and Russia to stop attacking another country. That's also the best way to stop all the suffering, the casualties, and the death we see caused by different types of weapons on the battlefield every day.
NTV.
Secretary General Gül Sonumut from NTV Turkey. The meeting of yesterday with regard to Sweden was rather a kind of icebreaker between the Turkish side and the Swedish side. You said that it was constructive. However, when we see the statement of the Turkish Minister Foreign Affairs and his Swedish counterpart, there are still a gap. So how would you be able to bridge that gap until next Monday? And what kind of pressure, because you also call always on Turkey, but what kind of pressure you could do on Sweden so that they somehow try to face or at least release the concerns of Turkey? Thank you very much.
For me, I think words like constructive and good is better than icebreaker, if I'm going to describe the meeting we had yesterday. It was a good meeting, it was a constructive meeting, and we made progress. And I'm confident that we'll continue to make progress, but there are still gaps to be bridged. And that's also the reason why I have invited President Erdogan and Prime Minister Kristersson to meet on Monday, also in a few days in Vilnius. And we will meet there together, the three of us, with our experts, to sit down and look into the details, the concrete issues, and where we see differences between the Swedish position and the position of Turkey. And then that's the way to overcome differences when they exist, as they now do in the issue related to the final ratification of Swedish accession into NATO. My message is that Sweden has delivered at the same time on the commitments they made in Madrid in the joint memorandum. At the same time, I'm also very clear that Turkey has real security concerns, and that's the reason why we are sitting down and addressing them. Because we also know that NATO allies have serious security concerns related to the fact that they want to have Sweden in as a full member as soon as possible, and that's not least the case for the Baltic countries that see the great advantage of having Sweden as a member. So I strongly believe it will be good for Sweden, it will be good for the Baltic region, the Nordic region, and it will be also good for the whole alliance, including Turkey, to have Sweden as a member as soon as possible.
Interfax Ukraine.
Yeah. Thank you, Anna. Irina Sommer, Ukrainian news agency Interfax Ukraine. I have follow-up question on Mindaugas regarding declaration. I do understand you can't comment on the language which will be in the declaration regarding membership, but can you tell us how far or how close alliance are regarding a wording in the declaration regarding possible membership for Ukraine, which also will be satisfactory for Kyiv? Thank you.
So we are, as we always are ahead of a NATO summit, now consulting and working on the exact language. That's the way NATO makes decisions. We are 31 allies, and we also, of course, having close contacts with Ukraine. But the allies are now consulting on the exact language in the communiqué. I'm confident that we will find a united way forward, including on how to move Ukraine forward on its goal to become a member of the alliance. I also expect, as I said, that there will be decisions on concrete support, practical support, but that has a dimension also when it comes to the political aspects, because more interoperability, a multi-year program for interoperability between NATO forces and Ukrainian forces helps, of course, Ukraine to move towards NATO. And stronger political ties with the NATO-Ukraine Council is also a way to move Ukraine and NATO even closer. So the language, the exact wording will be made public when we have agreed and when the statement is endorsed by all the leaders next week. But I'm confident that we'll have a message which is clear, and also not only clear, but most of all that we have to remember that allies also agree already on a lot of important principles when it comes to Ukraine and membership. We agree that NATO's door is open. We agree that Ukraine will become a member, which is an important message. And then we agree that it's for the NATO allies and Ukraine to decide when the time is right, and not for Russia to have a veto. And then the most urgent task, and all allies agree on that, is that we will stand by Ukraine. We will provide support to Ukraine for as long as it takes, because unless Ukraine win this war, there's no membership issue to be discussed at all. And that's the reason why allies are stepping up and providing donations, military support in an unprecedented way.